with the exception of Monday Night Football. Uh, and for the first time, and I'd say, what do you think, about 9 weeks? Chad is back.
The Chad.
I took a little longer vacation than I thought I was going to, but definitely needed. They had our football season start up. Things got crazy, and I'll see some big changes in my life. And yeah, so we're back though. NFL's back, so I couldn't miss this. And most importantly, the Bucks are 1-0. The Irish are 0-2. I had to beat Kalen to it. And
And
so yeah, I'm happy to be here. And all I know is that my team is on the winning side of the ball. Shane, I
yeah,
don't know how you guys didn't beat them by 60, but we can get to that soon enough. I don't know how you forced that many turnovers. But yeah, I have so many questions to ask about football, and I'm pumped to be back.
yeah, yeah, we're pumped to have you back. And Kalen, maybe a bittersweet weekend for you. Obviously, we were feeling pretty good about the Longhorns there. Good effort. I will say that I think that's the first time I've ever seen a team lose and jump into the rankings that were unranked for the AP poll. So
Yeah.
I think that's some kind of history being made there. But outside of that, and with your friends down there in Nashville, kind of disappointing in week one. How else was how was the rest of the weekend?
Well, I mean, it was an okay family weekend. I thought Saturday was great, man. I know we don't talk much college football in here anymore, but I had a great time watching college ball all around. I think Texas is back. It was great to see them kind of stack up against an SEC opponent, the number one in the country. I mean, number one in the decade. Right? So
Yeah.
that's awesome. I mean, they played really, really well. And guys, Texas has a defense. Like, what the hell, right?
Yeah, and you know what? Alabama's offense looks like shit on the road, but you know what? We have lots of time to talk football and lots of time to get into this, and we definitely will. But before we start, let's remember September is still Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. So if you can head over to childcan.ca, Liam's going to drop the link in the chat. Give him a donation of
Dot
.com.
com.
If you can donate funds, great. If you can donate your time, great. If there's something you can do for them, amazing. Anything we can help them with is fantastic. They've been great to us, so let's make sure that we're great to them. And somebody that was great to them last week would have been our friends over at Coolbet Canada. I should probably drop their exclusive bet on here that they were sending to us this morning. They have Russell Wilson over 275 passing yards, 3 touchdown passes, and the Broncos to win. That's playing at plus 520. And the answer is yes. I have already hammered that
How did
thing.
you do over the weekend, by the way?
You know what? I was hit and miss. I was up. I was way better with player props because your boy Traylon was very heavily undervalued. They only had him at 24 and a half receiving yards.
Get that one
Um,
catch.
Yeah, it was nice. Hey, I think we got a Giants fan on here, and it's a Giants fan we actually owe a prize to. So, Hudson, if I don't see you, I'll make sure Chad gets that hat to get to you.
Is that
Uh,
why he was chatting about how Kalen's doing? A Giants fan. The one time this guy gets to come out of the woodwork in the last 8 years. Come on.
yeah. Hey, he gets to do that, and week one is probably his favorite time. I think he was actually here the week one where the Steelers went on the road and rinsed the Giants for Monday Night Football.
Well, what's
So
also more upsetting though is that I was the one banging the drum about the Giants for the last 2 years. Danny Dimes, and I got off that train, and here we got like a Giants fan in my ear now. I've been drumming your beat for 2 years, man.
Yeah, and look where I got you, 0-1.
Oh, stop it.
yeah, whatever's
Did you
going on
miss
over
me?
there, Kalen, it is what it is. They they tried their best to figure it out. It wasn't there for them, and back to the drawing board. We'll see if Malik's in the cards coming soon. But we should start with the wild one, and the one that you guys know that my blood was boiling. My blood pressure was at an all-time high at multiple points of this game. You can imagine the profanities flowing out of this brand new studio basement down here, and it was we had it under control. Things were rocking and rolling, um, and then they weren't, and then mayhem broke out. So as non-Steeler Bengal fans, I'm curious how you guys viewed this, and then I'll get a little bit of Homer action, and then we'll keep running through some more of these games.
So I watch Red Zone on Sundays. That's my thing. It's the only way I can watch all the games. I don't have the attention span to game surf. It's just easier to put on Red Zone. I don't think I can ever remember a game that literally took over the red zone if you're only watching one game.
Yeah.
Because like they show every turnover, they show every time you go to the 50, every time else you're in the red zone, it's the name of the program. But like that last probably quarter and a half, it was nonstop, only Bengals and Steelers. I was like, I feel like I need to put this game on, but like I'm seeing the whole thing anyways. My biggest thing takeaway from the game was that's a really expensive offensive line they have in Cincinnati that didn't do any better than the offensive line they had a year ago.
Yeah.
Like they spent $140 million on that line, I believe, and they did not look like it at all. And then obviously with TJ going down, that's going to be a huge loss, and that definitely played into like the pressure that Cam Hayward got just going straight up the middle. And like that's where they spent their money was on the interior of the line. And so to me, it's like, are the Bengals that bad offensively on the line, or were just the Steelers that good? And that was my biggest takeaway. So I want to see what's going to happen now as you go into week 2, 3, and 4. If the Bengals can correct those mistakes, because if not, like it could be that's a tough division. The Browns look like they're not that bad, even with Brissett.
Yep.
The Ravens look like they were rolling. They're a good football team, and as much as you don't want to hear it, and you guys might have the best defense or one of the best defenses in all of football. So, like, can the Bengals go at this road? Like, you might not be able to outscore everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I agree, and you know, I think that the Browns can play the Brown style of football and it'll be fine. But Kalen, you know, you watched the game.
Oh, yeah.
You were pretty active in the chat.
Yeah.
All respectful stuff, of course. But does Joe Burrow need an appendix to be able to not throw interceptions, or what do you think?
I mean, it's just the yips. I think that's what it's going to be here. You guys got a good defense. So that's nothing that we've, that wasn't the question mark coming into this season. I mean, we talked about this weeks ago that how you guys were going to win that game was, well, you didn't even really have to use Najee. I mean, he got hurt, right? So he didn't really have to get leaned on too heavily, but or at all really. But that was how you're going to have to win that in defense. Your defense is amazing. I mean, the first pass of the game was an interception or the second pass? Yeah, first pass. And who else? Second pass. So Minka Fitzpatrick, too, of course, the guy that comes up with the ball, too, right? You guys were all over. You guys got handsy. There were some handsy things there. And I think it's like I watched a lot of games this weekend, and there was a lot of like just let them play kind of plays. Like unless they were really throwing at their body into them, there wasn't any like bad pass interference calls really, I would say, or anything that was missed that way. But
except at the end of the game.
Yeah. Well, listen,
in the end zone.
Yeah, came down to kickers at the end of the day, and you guys, Money McPherson. I mean, you earned the nickname for a reason. I'm hurting for a kicker too, but Money McPherson, you had your chance in Cincinnati to put the dagger in Pittsburgh. Like this was your opportunity, and you blew it.
I don't know, man. That snap was brutal. That threw off that timing. So like, I'm not even gonna put that all on him, like that.
Yeah,
because he had to stutter his step, and all of a sudden he rushed a kick.
And the wild thing about it is there was no discussion about the long snapper getting hurt until like they were on the 6-yard line, and they're like, "Oh, maybe we should mention that the long snapper's hurt, and the guy that's about to snap is the backup tight end that's never done this before."
Mm-hmm.
Like, first of all, how do you end up being in that situation? And if you were in that situation and you already knew, I mean, I don't know. I guess going for 2 there, you don't really know what you're in for. But there was a point there where I think that Zach Taylor was thinking, "Wow, we might just cut this kid, the backup tight end, for what he did because he's never going to recover with his teammates." And watching the game, so yeah, go ahead.
Like just mentally, like how can he bounce back from that?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's, like the amount of rent that's going to take up in his brain, and like does that translate into making a catch on 3rd and long?
Yeah,
like almost to the point where like I have to make this play to not let my team down instead of just going out and playing football. Because he did it on more than one occasion. So it's one of those things where like now he's really just, and unfortunately when you're not a starter and like you don't get that many reps, like every rep your job's on the line. That's a lot of pressure on a kid.
Well, talking about pressure on a kid, you got the quarterback goes and throws 4 interceptions. Did you read the tweet that I put in the chat about how he sat at his locker for 45 minutes looking stun-faced, just looking forward? The only time he left his locker for the first hour after the game was to the media.
Really?
Yeah, just sat there looking forward. Like it reminded me of the Sam Darnold, ghost that he saw. He looked like from what I'm understanding, it just looked like he was seeing ghosts in the locker room. I have no I don't Burrow's not going to have an issue with this. He's going to bounce back. He's got the type of ego and the swagger about him that he can certainly find a lesser opponent down the way. Like they don't exactly have. We talked about their schedule and my pick for them to kind of still make a good run in the playoffs here because they don't exactly play a lot of difficult teams outside of their own division. So I'm sure he'll be able to find a few teams down the way. But it wasn't just on Burrow. There was a lot of that team. Chase played well the entire game. Tyler Boyd undercut some routes that really, really didn't need to be undercut. There was some really bad routes done by T. Higgins prior to him getting knocked out. I don't know. Hopefully he's able to come back next week and they're going to need him. But there was a lot of sloppiness around everywhere. Nobody was crisp, I think, in that game outside of Chase, and Mixon was okay, but he really didn't get the opportunity to shine.
Yeah, and you know what? Mixon got a little bit banged up there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Chase was non-existent for the first quarter and most of the second quarter. But from that point, I mean, his stat line was big, so they had to find a way to get him the ball. Yeah, so I mean, they made the adjustments they needed to make. The Steelers' pass rush was unbelievable, and the secondary I think is a little bit better than what most people would give them credit for. Minka Fitzpatrick got paid, so I think the thought and the security of what he's going to do next season is out the door. Great news for the Steelers is it looks like TJ Watt is going to be able to avoid surgery and he's going to be back in 4 to 6 weeks.
They're going to get like a second or third opinion. I was reading that too.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to think. So I mean, that would be a catastrophic loss, but a guy like Alex Highsmith, and you know, like we're not going to use up the whole show to talk about the Steelers, but Alex Highsmith, a guy that they're kind of saying this needs to be his coming out party and this needs to be his year to shine because you know he's in his third year and you usually don't want your third round pick to go into his fourth year because if he does, then he's probably going to be moving on in free agency and making big money. 3 sacks. So
he's like the third biggest storyline of the game. If it wasn't for Burrow's 4 interceptions, if it wasn't for TJ Watt going off, basically having a Hall of Fame game all in one before getting hurt, he was the third biggest storyline. He looked amazing. You guys just keep doing it down there in Pittsburgh. Backer. Doesn't matter who it is. Substitute in. Just bring him in, and they're just going to get sacks.
Well, it all and I put this in the chat. It all goes to Brian Flores and Terrell Austin, who have reshaped the way that they're doing things. And even Devin Bush didn't look like a lost child out there. He actually played a little bit of football and looked good. He looked like a first round pick. So great to see that. Another first round pick. Lamar Jackson looked great against the Jets. I'm not buying that he was that is because he was against the Jets. I think that he's a man possessed. But is he nuts for turning down 180 million? And I see that shocked look on your face.
I have never heard you talk good about Lamar Jackson as far as a quarterback or even play style. Yeah. So
completion percentage was bad, but I mean, when you can make Devin Duvernay look like a star,
you stop it. That is the product of Texas. That's why you're taking shots right now.
No, you can you can call yourself an okay quarterback if you can make an average receiver look like a star.
I think the first thing it was the Jets. Let's just start with that.
I think the Jets have a decent defense, man. I don't think they're that bad. I didn't watch a ton of the game, but yeah, I agree.
Lamar first thing he has to do is, like you say, play like a man possessed. He doesn't have a choice. And the big, he bet on himself. The biggest thing is, can he play the way he did over 17 games and not miss any? That's literally the biggest hiccup of all. Like that's the only question, right? Because if he plays how he played yesterday, he's right back in that MVP category. And that's the Lamar that the rest of the league does not want to see.
So the one that doesn't have to run to get yards, right? Because he didn't have to take off yesterday.
Yeah, Lamar running when he wants to run, opposed to running for his life, is that there's a big difference there.
Right.
And they got their secondary back. They added Kyle Hamilton. They're better on the back end of the football, and that was their biggest weakness because all those guys were banged up last year and couldn't play.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about earlier. I said what Ravens team now to get to play. How that division can be so stacked now. You have a MVP caliber quarterback with I'd say a top 12 defense, do top 10 defense. That's a scary thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that Ravens team can be special, but Lamar turning down the bag, that 180, I don't blame him. Look what Deshaun got. Without going down that rabbit hole that we did all off season.
Yeah.
I wouldn't take anything less than him either.
Can you punish the Ravens for the Browns being the Browns?
No, But if I'm a player and I see a guy who's not on the field getting
Yeah.
paid and I'm not, I've won an MVP. He hasn't.
Yeah,
Like, you're
that's true.
offering me less than what you're offering. I think Dak's getting more money than you as well. Kyler got more money than you, and as much as like our friend loves Kyler Murray, like on Lamar Jackson, I'm like, Kyler's a poor man's me,
Yeah.
and that guy's getting 40 million a
Yeah.
season.
And
He got more than
Deshaun,
180.
yeah, I mean, you're filling up trophy cases and Deshaun Watson's filling up court cases, right? Like that's
Well,
and
okay, and there is also something else to remember here too. The Browns have the space. They have the cap room to do this, and they have two teams in the division that they knew were coming up to sign their quarterbacks in Burrow and in Lamar. They set the tone now. Those two quarterbacks are going to look inside their own division and they're going to say, why do we not get guaranteed money? Why can't we match that guaranteed? The Ravens did a great job. They got their two division rivals now are going to be backs up against the wall. There's no way Burrow's going to take a hometown discount. Why should he? Right? Right. This is what Lamar, the whole rumors about Lamar and the guaranteed money. And Richard Sherman tweeted yesterday, but like, he can't fault the guy for there's a bar that's been set out there. Why shouldn't he try to attain that bar, especially inside of his own division against a guy who hasn't played in 2 years and he has an MVP inside of that 2 year time frame? Right? It makes sense. Now, you guys, you're the lucky one, right? You're going to be living on this rookie contract for the next few years.
well, I mean, right now we got a guy named Mitch Trubisky throwing 38 times for 195 yards and feeling pretty good about himself managing that game. So that offense, yeah, I mean, the offense in Baltimore is scary. Um, if we want to overreact to week one, it probably goes Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, then Cleveland. You know,
Now, are you only labeled like I would agree with you if you're saying because now Watt's out. That's the only reason. If Watt is in the game and he's healthy, you guys are above the Ravens. After the way you played yesterday, I think you're better than you're better than the Ravens.
and so I'm not going to overreact to week one. Last week or last year, they went into Buffalo and took out the Bills, and we all know how the Bills season went. The rest of the thing, and I'm not writing off Cincinnati, but I did say early on in the summer that I think Cincinnati was going to have the Super Bowl hangover, and whether they decide to snap out of it week 11 like they did last year, obviously it's a long season, and that's why we do it. But you know, yeah, sure. If you want to put the Steelers with TJ Watt above Baltimore, that's fine. Right now, after 1 week and being a Steelers fan, I'm comfortable saying that Baltimore is probably still the favorite for the division. But I would move us from the preseason fourth up to to the after week one second, and kind of leave it there. And go ahead.
Now, just before we get away from this Ravens and Jets game, just the last bit. How ugly is it that on week one, that some fans out there had to watch Joe Flacco throw the ball almost 60 times?
Yeah.
Like, how do you let the game get out of hand that much that you got to let inflappable Flacco toss it 60 times? That's terrible. And he had like a 5 yard average. That's terrible.
Yeah. And he's just a statue out there, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
and a Baltimore defense is going to feast on that. I'm curious to, week two is always one of those tough ones that, we think we got it nailed after week one, and then we go hit those gambling lines, and we're like, oh shit, no, never mind, that's no good. Um, and I don't have the numbers, but I got sent a report. I haven't looked at it yet. Vegas made a lot of money.
There's a lot
They
of
did.
pro betters that didn't win any games this
Surprise.
week.
Did you
Yeah,
tell me
you
the
know
house
what?
doesn't always win?
No, look around at some of these lines that covered, the Lions with the backdoor cover, and you know, the Giants kind of sneaking in there, and like we're gonna keep going. This one here, this next one was something that people were hammering because they saw the Minnesota Vikings favored by a point and a half before the game kicked off. When I picked them, they were the underdog, and they were right at even money. But by kickoff, it was a point and a half to the Vikings, and I think people went and they got after the Packers and they bet the Packers hard, and the Packers laid an egg. And I think this is a little bit different than last year's egg in Week One. I think that this is a much better team that they ran into. Um, I'm not ready to overreact and take the Bucks out of the Super Bowl because I took the Bucks and the Bills. Um, but Minnesota might be that team that kind of comes out of nowhere and you find them sitting around an NFC Championship game this year.
Yeah, they have the pieces. The new coach of the offense was clicking. Dalvin Cook is a great running back. I've been a fan of his forever.
Mm-hmm.
Kirk Cousins is just like you know what you're getting from him, and JJ's lights out. Like J.R. Alexander is a phenomenal corner, and he couldn't even do anything to contain him. They couldn't. They tried zoning him. They tried double teaming him. They tried playing man on him. There was nothing they could do. And then when they did stop him, they put it underneath the field,
Right.
or they checked it down.
Right. And Irv Smith was out there, and it was just a team that looked really, really good and fairly sharp. And now, like we talk about sharp, I'm gonna say something, let you guys digest it. We're gonna pick it back up, and then we're gonna talk about if the Packers are in trouble. Of the teams, the quarterbacks that didn't play anything throughout the preseason, they went 3-7 so far, which we could call that stat bullshit. But I think that there is something there somewhere. We agreed that Stafford didn't look right. We agree Burrow didn't look right. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure if Aaron Rodgers played in the preseason, but I'm going to assume he didn't based on this stat. But I kind of feel like the Packers are in trouble here. And I think that, I was at a fantasy draft. It was an in-person draft. And I saw 5 Packers receivers get drafted. And I was like, huh, I thought that their offense was supposed to, I thought they had nobody. It turns out that they do actually have nobody. And we all just believed the hype, and we overdrafted Christian Watson, and Dobbs looked fine. Cobb is a shell of himself. Lazard didn't even play. I'm not even sure who
AJ
else.
Dillon's the guy. That's the difference maker. That's what they have. Is AJ? I think he's their best player on offense right now.
Yeah.
And I'm not counting out Aaron Rodgers ever, because this is what happened last year, and he came back and won an MVP. And I'm sure he'll tell us all to relax again in a press conference this week. So he's gonna he's gonna do his thing. You know what he's gonna get. The receivers suck though. That's the biggest thing. But that's what happens when you make yourself get paid the way that he did. You can't keep people.
Right.
And I'm sure he saw his buddy Devontae have lived a pretty good life over in Vegas on the weekend.
Yeah, they looked good, and he looked good. And
17 targets for Devontae Adams, and I wish Aaron Rodgers wishes he could have thrown the ball 17 times to Devontae Adams yesterday.
Right. I mean, I think he would throw it 17 times to Donald Driver right now if he could get him, but I don't see him coming through. Jordy Nelson isn't coming through the door. The Packers are going to have to figure it out. Tunyon is out there, and he actually, he looked like he was in much better shape than what people were going to give him credit for. But Kalen, we had Josh on here, and Josh was talking about how the Packers had an awesome defense, and this is going to be one of those years that they sneaky go to the Super Bowl. I think that they're going to sneaky not go to the playoffs.
So after, I was really shocked when Josh, the way he was, I thought, Josh is a hype guy. He likes to talk about
100%.
with the way that I do too, right? I really thought that where is this coming from? I took a little dive into like the Green Bay Packers Reddit, and this is the wine that they are all drinking over there. The fans of the Packers right now are talking about how deep this team is. There is so much depth everywhere, especially on defense. Every year, it's either been offense has been good and defense has been shit, or vice versa, or the special teams and the defense has dragged them down. And they hired this special teams coach is supposed to solve their woes and yada, yada, yada. The bottom line is the offensive line looked like trash yesterday. He didn't have his left tackle. That's a big, big loss. I mean, everybody and their mother knows that the left tackle is the most important piece of the offensive line. I mean, how often is that mentioned by the announcers every game? So if you lose, especially Bakhtiari, he's a huge piece to their puzzle, right? So I do anticipate that when that guy's back and the protection is a little bit better for him, that he's not going to be running for his life. He took 4 sacks yesterday, but he certainly could have taken a hell of a lot more if it wasn't for, and he's not as mobile as he was 3 years ago. That was very evident yesterday, right?
Right.
And Watson with that crucial drop. Like that,
oh yeah.
That's how you earn your quarterback's trust. Yeah. That's how you earn your quarterback's trust. And this is how you make it. You're a big body guy. And this is what you dropped. That was a bad drop. But
he catches that ball, that game's different. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah.
It would have been. I think it would have been. There was a little bit too much momentum once that drop happened, unfortunately. But yeah, it was yeah, that the fan base was certainly stone sober 2 hours after the game and kind of looking at themselves from what I was reading on the pages. But uh, I'm not willing to still to count it out, man. Aaron Rodgers got his hair cut. He's ready for the season. He's not looking like Nicolas Cage anymore coming to the game. Uh, I still think that things can be done once he gets his tackle back. And guys, he still can't run the ball. This year. Matt LaFleur said that they were going to emphasize the run this year, or this year's story, and they didn't even really start to do that out of the gate. It wasn't like the game just kind of shifted on them and they had to start, being pass happy or anything. They kind of just went that direction, it seemed, and I think they probably could have stuck with the run a little bit more, and things would have opened up for them.
Well, I mean, this has always kind of been the knock on the Fleur, right? Is the play calling and decision making. He might have out thought his own game plan, and realistic. I mean, Chad's called plays before, so we'll defer to him and see what he thinks. But I think that he thought coming out of the gate throwing, he would catch the defense off guard, and it just wasn't there. And you do a couple 3-and-outs, and the other team's able to move the ball and build the momentum. And before you know it, you're behind the 8 ball, and you feel like you need to throw no matter what every single down.
I think the biggest thing, is that, I'm the first admit, I want to throw the ball every play. I hate running the football. It's boring.
Yeah.
It doesn't people watch. Doesn't get people excited. I understand why you run the football. Still don't like it. That being said, after that drop ball, the only passes I would have thrown were screens, dump offs, and comebacks. Get my confidence back. Get Aaron's confidence back in this receiving core. Any crossers that take time to develop, any deep shot, as great as they are, and they can help you out, until you get the confidence back in those guys making those plays, you can't do it. And then, I think running the football would have been key because it would have brought those DBs into the box, and it gives you that chance. But am I worried about Aaron Rodgers? No. Am I worried about the Packers? They're still going to win 11 games. We know that.
You think so?
They have the Bears and they have the Lions. There's 4 wins right there.
And that one touchdown that Jefferson had too, where he was absolutely butt ass naked over the middle of the field. You know what I'm talking about? That was just a breakdown in coverage. I think that really swung the momentum to the point that the Packers couldn't come back from it anymore, unfortunately. But the one thing is, guys, Sammy Watkins. People were banging the Sammy Watkins drum, right? This is a guy who hasn't maybe 600 yards maximum in the last 6 years. I don't know what they were expecting they were going to get out of this guy. He looked like his age in this game. It isn't exactly they certainly have an athletic defense over in Minnesota, but Watkins wasn't doing any favors for Aaron while being on the field.
Yeah, and Watkins has kind of been that guy in free agency every year. He goes to Baltimore and he's supposed to be okay. He goes to Kansas City and he bounces around here and there. He looks good. He's got the right body type. He says all the right things. Says, I played with Patrick Mahomes, but boy, oh boy, is Aaron Rodgers on a different level. I think you look like an idiot.
Did anybody watch Patrick Mahomes play yesterday?
Right.
You just skip right to that because that Chiefs team was phenomenal.
Fantasy.
So, I do definitely want to talk Chiefs, but we can't skip the I don't even know what they call themselves anymore. They've had 3 names in 3 years, but the Commanders. Are we believing any of this Carson Wentz stuff or?
Carson Wentz is gonna Carson Wentz. Can we just move on? We know, every year we talk about him how he's gonna be different. So and every year he's ugly.
So I looked into last year. Do you know what his stat line was last year for touchdowns and interception ratio?
It wasn't even bad.
It was just when you need a play, it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
it's when he has to think. It goes all downhill.
When he was on national TV is when it was bad. So he had 27 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. I'd say that's reasonable. I'd say if you're Ryan Tannehill or Mitchell Trubisky,
that's what he got 3 years ago. 33
that's the line that you want. That's the line that you want, right?
For sure.
Cousins line right there.
Yeah, and if you look at 4 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, I think that the football team, Commanders, whatever, with this news in Dallas and the alarms are sounding in Dallas, I think that they're going to be a team that hangs around a little bit, and with a weaker NFC and a pretty good pass rush, is it going to surprise you if the Commanders are the 7th wildcard team?
No, no, I'll give you a wild card. Absolutely. I mean, they could certainly hang around and be in that because the NFC is so weak, and with the fact that they're probably going to lose Dak now for 6 weeks, maybe even more. Thumb injury on the throwing hand ain't no joke, right?
Yeah. Chad, what do you think? Have we given them enough time? Should we get into the AFC South?
Yeah,
Well, we still talk about that game if you want.
So, well,
First
it kind of
they
leads
play
in, right?
Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean
That's the point. They suck.
Jacksonville stinks, right? Like
Travis Etienne, I was high on him. He dropped 2 balls. One was a touchdown. The other one would have converted a third down. And they were both right in his hands. And like you're there to be Trevor Lawrence's safety blanket. He just chose to drop the ball. Like you're the guy that he trusts. Like, and then James Robinson was the one who showed out again.
yeah, and like
That guy gets no love, and was a Pro Bowler last year. They put him right back on the bench this year. And then Etienne's dropping balls that are gifts.
yeah, exactly. It's week 1. We don't write anybody up, but we're pretty sure we know what Jacksonville is. The Colts apparently don't show up for week 1. But if I had to pick a AFC South champion gun to my head right now, I'd say that the Houston Texans played the best this weekend.
Jesus.
They did play the best.
Listen, all 4 teams in the South didn't get a win this week, and 2 played each other. I get it. It's a tough division right now.
OJ Howard looks good.
A weekend guy he signed his contract on Wednesday, catches 2 touchdowns on Sunday.
Yeah, the difference is like that was the ceiling. That was the ceiling for the Texans, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like every other team could still like trend up. The Texans are like, oh shit.
Okay, so
we blew our shot too early.
Now, mind you, the Colts defensively can get stronger. They can have Shaquille Leonard will be joining them here in a few weeks when he comes off the pup, right? But we're talking about ceilings. Is that the ceiling for the offense for the Colts too? At the same time, Matt Ryan looked shook. He looked like talking about a statue that Joe Flacco was. Ryan was a statue yesterday again, playing against a very
Ryan's always been a statue.
Yeah. Well, he's been very bad the last few years. But a nameless Houston Texans defense. Can you tell me one player on their team? I watched the game and I didn't have the audio on, but I'm looking at numbers going, who the hell is that? I know a lot of players have changed their jersey numbers, but this is in my division. I don't even know who the hell these players are anymore. So this is a nameless team that he seemed to struggle against. Now, mind you, what's his face that I always give a hard time to, but Pittman, he had an okay game. I'll give him credit where credit is due. He certainly showed up for his quarterback when needed, but that might be the ceiling for the offense for them too. Like it's going to have to get Jonathan Taylor's going to have to surpass 100 yards every game for them to be successful. I feel Matt Ryan is honestly. I made a joke with my friend who's a Colts fan over the weekend. If you take Matt Ryan or Carson Wentz and made him number 2 and just change the jersey number, they look at the same player. Like the way that Wentz played last year in Indy is exactly how Matt Ryan played yesterday's game. So
I think it's the offense. Like, and I don't mean like the offensive players. I mean, like, I think it's the Frank Wright offense. Like, it's shit. It's outdated. It's time to step it up. I think that if this Matt Ryan thing doesn't work out, and this is going out on a limb, but it is likely that he is the first head coach fired and doesn't even make it through the season.
Well, yeah, and that also leads me into Doug Peterson, or we were just talking about the Jaguars. This whole hype train that Philly created after they won their Super Bowl, I think it's over. The Frank Wright train is over, unfortunately, which means that I think the Ballard train is also going to be over. The draft king no more, unfortunately. And then in Houston, I mean, it doesn't, or not Houston, sorry, in Jacksonville with Doug Peterson, I know it's his first game. It's not his first game in the NFL as a coach. That was his first game with his new team. They didn't look crisp either on offense, and that's what you're brought there for. Right.
And there was another team from the division that we're not talking about yet, right?
We'll get there. We didn't look.
I don't want to be that guy, but like we have some really good stuff to cover, and we're talking about a division that no one won a football game. Can we just keep on rolling here? There's some really good football teams that played.
Yeah. So the Titans lost to the Giants. There it is. It's out there. How about the Chargers and the Dolphins living up to the hype? Because I think that
There's definitely some explosions at the Miami game. Boom.
Yeah. Jesus. I think that with the Dolphins, I just expected that they were going to falter, and I expected that all these moves were going to mean nothing at the end of the day. But I don't know. It seemed different. Watching them seemed different. The players, it seemed sharp. Tua didn't look like a bag of shit, and overall, I'm not buying the Dolphins yet, but I am leaning towards the Dolphins having the ability to be second place in that division.
They'll be second place. Their defense is probably, I'd say, their top 10 defense, and speed kills.
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
those two receivers, like it's gonna make Tua's. I don't know. He came out last year and said like, I didn't realize what open the NFL was. Well, these two guys, that opening is a lot easier,
Right.
and it's that
Right.
simple. They're gonna be two. Like he threw some balls yesterday that kind of questionable. The one Tyreek Hill made a play and a half on. He one-handed out of a defender with an easy interception, and that goes as completion for Tua. So like those are the things we have to pay attention to, because you can't expect those guys to make those plays all the time.
Yeah.
Like he has two studs out there that he can throw the ball to, and both of them don't have to play the deep ball. Both of them can run underneath. They can do those little pop passes that made Pat, like, obviously I'm not comparing to Patrick Mahomes. I'm not Tyreek Hill. I won't be that guy. But like there's some passes that Tua can do that fit into that mold again. Like as they run the like quick slant, that quick slip, like the red zone, the Chiefs run all the time. It's like speed versus speed,
Mm-hmm.
and you have two guys that can run it in both directions. You can literally cross both of them if you chose to.
I agree, and I frankly I think that they kind of embarrassed the Patriots. I think that the Patriots are, you know, they came at. You would expect Belichick after all the bullshit that was going on to at least come out and be able to score some points, but they got some rough news today also, that they might be without Mac Jones for a couple weeks here, which means you're either handing the ball to, I believe, Brian Hoyer or Bailey Zappi, who was the Western Kentucky superstar that broke Joe Burrows' touchdown record. If that name rings a bell at all.
You know, you obviously know Brian Hoyer, the quarterback's left hand, is going to get in that game.
Yeah. Hey.
But now, as far as the Patriots, I was just making a joke there about the Texans going up and down their jerseys and not knowing who the hell anybody is. Have you guys looked at the Patriots roster? Like it's
bleak.
almost the same thing. You got
Yeah.
a couple of players like McCourty that you're going to know. Of course, we're going to know Mac Jones, and you know some receivers because they were high draft picks that never actually panned out anywhere else they went. But
Mhm.
this is a nameless team, nearly from top to bottom, and we were with a nameless offensive coordinator. Nobody knows really who's doing what down there, and it clearly shows on the field. That Mac Jones played a well scripted game, but it wasn't it wasn't anything to write home about by any means, right?
The
I know his
Patriots always
stat line
suck in
looks great.
September.
What's that?
The Patriots always suck in September.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're a 2-2 team every single September, and then they get the ball rolling. And we're talking about them being a playoff team. Like, oh shit, this might actually be a contender. So like, it's one of those things like you can't overreact to the Patriots not winning a game in September because it happens every year. But I think it was the way the Dolphins won that we should talk about the Dolphins. Who cares about the Patriots? Because you have to do it a second time, and beating Bill Belichick is not easy.
Well, and they had the weather on their side, right? 90 degrees at kickoff, and it was humid. And, you know, I don't know the next time that they play New England, but it's probably going to be nice and chilly up there in Foxborough. So weather's always the equalizer. And you're talking about nameless Patriots, but I would say, how about the absolutely loaded Chargers? And I know that Chad and I have wanted the Chargers to be good for a couple of years now, and you know the Derwin Jameses of the world. But how about the reemergence of Khalil Mack? You know, did you know that? You know what? Like, obviously, we remember the off season, but you go into week one and you're like, oh yeah, they have Khalil Mack, and
yeah,
Justin Herbert looks like an absolute animal.
yeah, and
He made a couple of throws that were unreal.
Like
and
him and Patrick Mahomes are gonna be competing for MVP. I think
yeah,
it's the two of those guys and the two of those guys only playing for an MVP, right? If we're gonna go
Josh
off it right
Allen.
now, yeah, I guess
Josh
yeah,
he's
Allen.
Josh
already.
Allen, yeah. And not just that, like I know that Devontae is going to have a great game probably against mostly damn near anybody. It isn't like the secondary. They've got a Sunday Samuel Jr. over there. They've got Chris Harris Jr. over there. They had a player they wouldn't play yesterday either. Right? J.C. Jackson did not play yesterday. A very highly
Yeah.
touted free agent pickup who is paid to play man on man against players like Devontae Adams and use speed against the athletic ability and the agility of route running that Devontae has. So game two is going to make for some real fireworks when hopefully everybody is healthy and we get to see J.C. Jackson go up against Devontae Adams and really see, are you earning that contract? Because that's what you're brought here. You were brought here at the time, I think, when he signed. I may be wrong. I don't think Hill was traded out yet. So I think he was like, "You come in here, you're going to cover Devontae, you're going to cover Tyreek, and use that speed, right?"
Yeah, and watching this game, like the first thing that came to my mind, because I recently just watched the Elway to Marino 30 for 30, which is awesome. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Is every 10 years we're always talking about, wow, this quarterback class, like what is the NFL going to do when Peyton Manning retires? What is the NFL going to do when Brett Favre retires? This just shows that like there's always going to be somebody else. And Justin Herbert, everyone wrote him off. Chad and I watched a game of his at Oregon, and we were both looking at each other like, how the fuck is this guy going to be a first round pick in the
Yeah.
NFL? Doesn't even make
I was
sense.
wrong. I'll admit it.
Yeah.
I'll admit
Yeah.
it
We
over
were,
and over again. To the day that guy retires, I was
yeah.
wrong on Justin Herbert, and I have to eat those
Yeah.
words.
Well, then when he
Yeah.
got that stupid haircut, that didn't help at all either, right? And they took heat for that.
Right. Right. Well, exactly. But look, the quarterback position is healthy everywhere except for in Dallas, because in Dallas, the alarm bells are sounding. There is 6 to 8 weeks without Dak Prescott. Uh, I think that what the Buccaneers defense did yesterday to the Cowboys offense shows how pedestrian of an offense they possess at the moment. And I would say of all the phases of last night's game, the one that didn't click for the Bucks was the passing game. But Chad, are you worried that Tom Brady isn't going to be able to pull his passing game together by the end of the season?
No.
Yeah, I mean,
I think it's the most ridiculous thing anyone could ask. Like, can we just talk about how good Julio Jones looked? Like, I'm not trying to be a dick to Kalen, but this wasn't the guy that was in Tennessee last year.
no.
He was significantly better in this offense. Maybe they're using him better. I'm not like, I don't know, but this isn't the guy that we saw last year. This isn't the guy that we saw 2 years ago in Atlanta. Like, he looks like he could be a top receiver in this league still. And yes, he's not going against top DBs and number one coverage guys. I think that's a big difference. Like, you have Mike Evans there. Obviously, Godwin was there for a good chunk of the game. If we can use Julio in that way and bring him to the slot and let him use that size, that is such a weapon for us. And it almost replaces the loss of Gronkowski because he's actually faster and a bigger specimen.
Yeah. And it
Yeah,
was kind of a tell that they were like they ran the ball with him too. So I mean,
yeah.
they know that he's healthy. They know that he could take a hit.
So yeah, like, I'm not worried about Tom Brady whatsoever. I was actually really impressed with our defense and how fast they were on the back end. I think Intel Lynch was turning into one of the best safeties in football. He's definitely got a lot better in pass coverage. He was always a banger, but I feel like now he's kind of understanding like when not to creep up and when to stay home. And he's finding a way to get to the football. He is a bit smaller, so he has to be a bit smarter in taking chances. But I think now in his third year, he's kind of figured that out. And Carlton Davis is quietly a really good corner in this football league. I wouldn't say he's in the top 5 and top 10, but he's a really good corner. And with the rest of that defense, the pressure we get on the quarterback, it makes good corners look really good.
The linebacker stood out to me. Smith, whatever. He was the 32nd pick a couple of years ago.
Tryon Smith, the number 9.
Yeah, he was all over the place. He's way bigger than I thought he was. He's way faster than I thought he was. When they originally picked him, I thought that was a silly pick, but it looked like they took it. They just kind of let him work his way in, and this is kind of his year to take the next step. I think the Buccaneers are live, and it's fair to say that the Cowboys are dead. Um, we should probably talk about the Lions and the Eagles for about a second, and then we got lots of time because there was a lot of Chiefs action. Trey Lance, we're not ready to write him off yet, and maybe the Falcons have found a quarterback or something, but they just continue to lose games and lose games. Um, I guess the question to ask is, there's no surprise that we thought the Eagles were going to win this game. But how many more moral victories does Dan Campbell need to get before he starts to lose the fan base and ultimately loses the job?
I was talking to a Lions fan today on the phone, and I brought that exact question to him. Like, at what point do these come from behind losses start to add up? Because at the end of the day, that doesn't win games. It doesn't get in the playoffs. All it does is say, we tried. And when does the participation ribbons stop?
Right.
Like, if you win 4, or we'll say 5 games this year, to be generous, and you're competitive in the rest of them, but you still won 5 games last year and were competitive, you actually haven't taken a step. You're the exact same team you were a year ago. Now, if you come and you win 8 games this year and you're competitive in the rest of them, okay, well, then we can talk about improvement in the way that you're trending in the right direction. But if there's just competing in games, that doesn't mean nothing for job security. That just means like you're okay. And okay doesn't get you jobs last long in the NFL.
Right.
And like there's a lot of talent on that coaching staff, a lot of young coaches. And I think guys like Aaron Glenn are going to get phone calls as well. So when you lose your coordinator on defense, then what's going to happen? Then you lose that guy. Well, then is your defense going to respond the way that it does? And so, like, yeah, all these what ifs and you're trending cool. You did not go and get a quarterback. You chose not to. You stuck with Jared Goff. So does that mean that you're giving? To me, it's like, does that signaling you're giving Dan Campbell a third year? Because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. Is like you didn't go and try to get a quarterback to better your team. You stuck to where you're at. And you can't say they didn't know like where they're drafting. There was lots of quarterbacks there. They had the picks to trade up if there was someone there.
Right.
So they have to be giving him a third year. That's something that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like as long as he still has the fan base, he still has the ownership. And once he loses the fan base, if they go 0-17 but sell out all the games and they're selling standing room only on Thursdays, I don't think anybody in the Lions ownership cares because they're actually making some money and no, it doesn't matter. But at what point does the fan base turn their back? Like Hard Knocks was obviously the story. Every team is the most hyped team coming out of Hard Knocks. We can picture the Browns with Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley as the offensive coordinator, and those guys fighting and whining. Um, Lions are no different. They're not talented on defense. They're not that good on offense. Jared Goff has a ceiling. The offensive line is probably the best feature that they have. They ran the ball well, but if you're down, you can't run the ball. I mean, look, they're the most they were the most overrated team coming into this league or into the season, and I think that's Josh doesn't want to hear that, but I think that's where we're at.
Hold on. Hold on. If this team had anybody but Jared Goff at quarterback yesterday, any one of the 31 other quarterbacks in the league, Jalen Hurts included, would they won that game?
I don't think so. The
You
score
really don't think so? I
score
really
doesn't
don't think
dictate it.
that this game is on Dan Campbell. I think
I don't
and this team.
I don't think Ryan Tannehill could have led all those comebacks.
Oh, what he has the most comebacks in the league since he took over as a quarterback. Shane, come on, know your stats. Anyway, out of this one, uh, Jared Goff cannot win a game himself. Cannot win a game. Period.
Fair.
DeAndre Swift, if you're getting a running back running with for 144 yards, you should win the game. But you can't convert on third down because your quarterback can't throw past 5 yards accurately. This completely falls on the GM, who unfortunately is hand in hand. He's the one that got signed together. But what GM trades away Matthew Stafford for Jared Goff? I don't care you got draft picks out of it. Stafford wins a Super Bowl in the very first friggin' year. He's away from the franchise. And what has Jared Goff got you? A bunch of the same shit that he was doing back in LA and having to come from behind to get victories but he had a smart enough offensive coach to get him some of those victories. Unfortunately, they don't have that in Detroit. I just don't think the team is the team is competing. Who's not competing is Jared Goff. The guy's competed in years.
Okay, well, are you a closet Lions fan? Because
I watched
that was
the
incredibly
game.
passionate.
Because I think that this is a team that is just on the verge, and they can take the opportunity in an NFC North that isn't very good at all. But unfortunately, they're not going to because they have Jared Goff at quarterback.
But that's what we're saying. How long does being on the verge get you a head coaching job without being like,
Yeah. At
like
what
this
point?
is like that's on the GM and head coach. If you're always there but you're not winning, you're still not winning.
Oh, I feel it. I think, but the most important piece of the puzzle is the quarterback, and that came from the GM. So that's why I think it's a pass.
But the GM's going to fire the coach before he fires himself.
Yeah, and you know what? The GM and the coach both decided to chase their backups out of town. So Jared Goff is the guy they're tied to. They weren't willing to part with a 4th-round pick for Mason Rudolph, so that's where they're at. They didn't go get Jimmy, whether that would have helped or not. But people were writing off the Chiefs, and whether we were writing off the Chiefs because we thought Tyreek Hill was going to be such a big hit to them, or we just forget that Patrick Mahomes is good because he wasn't in the Super Bowl. Whatever the case was, I was of the theory that now that Tyreek Hill is not there, they don't have to run any more of these goofy, stupid trick plays, and they didn't. And lo and behold, they actually moved the ball, even with a Juju Smith-Schuster fumble here and there. I think that they got receivers there. Mahomes doesn't have to focus on one guy. He still found Kelsey. Uh, Edwards-Helaire actually didn't look as bad as we expected him to be. Chad, I know you got lots to say about the Chiefs, but uh, what like were you of the opinion that they were gonna take a step back with Tyreek Hill not there?
I thought they were. And my one note I put down beside that we had the Chiefs game, I put all gas, no brakes. That was the only way to describe that offense.
Yeah.
McCall Hardman balled out, and like he showed, hey, look, I might not be as fast as Tyreek Hill because I don't know if there's anybody that is. Okay, but I'm one step slower, and that's still faster than 95% of the people in this league. Watching the Chiefs in the red zone as an offensive coach is like, it's mind blowing. The way they operate, the way like Eric Bellamy might never be a head coach in this league, but he's really good at being an offensive coordinator and he's got creativity. And him and Andy Reid together, dude, like they do crazy things, man. Like they made Alex Smith look really good. They got Alex Smith paid.
Mm-hmm.
And then Patrick Mahomes came, and like I don't know if we're going to see a talent like that in a long, long time. As we just said, every 10 years we say this.
Yeah.
Because I think that now it's like now the guys are going to do the things that Patrick Mahomes does, but we've never seen it before. But watching that guy take one step to the left and throw a ball on an angle that no one's ever been taught to throw a football before is absolutely crazy. And then watching guys like Juju Smith play there, like he did enough. He doesn't have to be great there. And I think he's going to fall into like, and maybe he never wants to hear this, but that number 2 role is going to be really good for him.
Yeah, I think that's was his most successful seasons in Pittsburgh was as the number 2 to AB. Whoever they want to be the number 1 there, whether eventually it's Sky Moore or Mecole Hardman. Kelsey is probably like a number 1 passing option. Valdez-Scantling isn't a number 1 receiver, but again, if that guy ends up being your 3 and they're just trying to fight on who's 1 and who's 1A, who's 1B kind of thing, and Schuster and Scantling are just complementary pieces. Yeah, I mean, the sexy pick was the Chargers, but I don't know. The Chargers are gonna have to beat the Chiefs. I'll tell you what, Thursday night football this week is gonna be nuts.
Well, and like their offense, we had some question marks on it, but look at the defense. I mean, the Cardinals are nothing to sniff at either. I mean, mind you, they are missing a couple of pretty good wide receivers right now, right? But they're still a very good offensive team. They got an offensive coach who's found ways to score points, especially early on in the season. It's usually later on that they start to get the hiccups. Most people look at the box score and say, "Oh, 21 points." Now, those are all like gimme points at the very end of the game, right? So I don't. That was really telling that the Chiefs have at least a competing defense this year, which is what they're going to need in the AFC West.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And the AFC West is going to be the toughest division in football. I mean, we can say that still pretty confidently after week 1. Not sure that the Saints can challenge the Bucks the way that we thought they would. The Falcons continue to blow games at like tremendous rates, and I have a thing that that Big Fudge sent me that I'll send you guys off air. All the games that the Falcons have blown over the last 3 years, and it's pretty hilarious to look at. Yeah. Or did you send it, Chad? Maybe Chad
No,
sent it.
I didn't send it. I don't remember.
All
All I know is like the Super Bowl is the least of their concerns.
Yeah. But we do have a game tonight, Broncos Seahawks. Russ Wilson heading back into whatever they call that place, but the Pacific Northwest. And is it fair to say that he will put a couple moonshots in the air tonight, Chad?
Only if they go to Jerry Judy, because I need that for my fantasy team.
Yeah.
That's the thing I care about. But yeah, I think he's gonna like. I didn't realize the split there was as rough as it was. They made it seem on all fronts like everybody was friends and it was a mutual part. The last few days, a lot of stories have come out saying it was not that way, and he has a lot of dislike for Pete Carroll, a lot of dislike for the organization, and I guess it goes right back to him as well from them. And unfortunately, they don't have the dogs to stop Russell Wilson. So I think
Yeah.
this is going to be a feeding frenzy for him and that Denver team. There's weapons all over the field for them offensively, and now they have a quarterback that can get them the ball. And the guy that Denver sent to Seattle didn't win the job. Like,
Right.
like if you ever want to know if you win a trade, like that's how you know.
Right.
You sent a quarterback and he lost a job to Geno Smith.
Right.
To the point where they put Geno's face on the side of the stadium.
Yeah. And outside of DK Metcalf, like their only offensive player that is of note is Noah Fant. And if nobody can get him the ball, what's wrong, Galen?
What's Tyler Lockett?
Tyler Lockett was great because of Russell Wilson. I'm not sure that Tyler Lockett's anything without him.
See, that is where I kind of this deep ball accuracy that Russell Wilson has. I think one of the best deep ball catcher or like adjustment to the ball. Sorry, adjusting wide receiver the ball. That was Lockett. Like you look at all his highlights, that man is readjusting to the vast majority of the balls that are thrown his way. I'm excited to see if he can readjust for Geno Smith. I highly doubt it. But
Geno Smith won't throw it that far.
Yeah, Geno can't throw the ball like Russell.
But the readjustments is going to be behind him. He's going to have to readjust for the ball. Oh, it's over here. Oh, it's way in front of me.
Those are called comeback routes. They only go 16 yards.
Yeah, no, we got about 3 minutes to wrap up here, but the only thing that Seattle will do interesting on offense is maybe find like new fancy ways to hand it off. They're not going to have Kenneth Walker III tonight, so it's going to be a lot of Rashard Penny and DJ Dallas, and that means bad news because I think that the Broncos defense is pretty good. In a leery sense, because 96% of the money is on the Broncos to win on the money line. Usually when that kind of stuff happens, you want to try and fade it, but this one is an easy one. This feels like Alabama versus Austin Peay. No?
Austin Peay. Who's that?
It's like a Division II school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know who it was. When I heard Austin, exactly. I thought you were leading into something else with that, so I was waiting for you.
We've been mean enough to you. We got 2 minutes. Biggest takeaway from week 1. It can be a team, a player, something that you expected, but we'll do that and then we'll wrap and we'll get out of here.
I think the AFC is going to run through the West. That simple. The Bills are good, but I think because the AFC West has been playing like playoff caliber football majority of their season, I got to give them none in the West. And I just think the AFC is going to go through there. The Bills can't run the football.
Okay, so for me, my biggest takeaway is I think that Minnesota might have a pretty easy ride to the top seed there with their division.
In the division or the conference?
In the conference. With their division and with their schedule, I know that the Bucs look like the big favorite here, but I don't know, man. I think they're onto something down there. And if Kirk Cousins says he's the one who says he wants to get the Triple Crown for Justin Jefferson more than Justin Jefferson wants it. So it looks like he's going to force feed that kid.
I would say biggest takeaway for me is that this was the first year in, I think it was 20 plus years that we didn't have a rookie starting week 1 at quarterback. That speaks volumes to where some of the teams are at and maybe where things are going, maybe where the development is of the quarterbacks that were picked. Naturally, because only one of them was picked in the first round, there wasn't a whole lot of fan bases calling for them. As a Titans fan, they're not calling for Malik. If you're a Falcons fan, they're not calling for Desmond. Carroll's on IR. There's just not a lot of guys out there. I think Steelers fans, because of Mike Tomlin, let the whole Kenny Pickett thing go as soon as Tomlin came out and made the decision because he's earned that kind of trust and that kind of respect. So big standout to me that nobody had to start a rookie quarterback. And week 2, we're going to head into this exact same thing, and we're not going to have a rookie starting quarterback. I think that this is going to go pretty deep into the year. And I think that speaks volumes for the quarterback position, and it shows the kind of depth that we have going on in the quarterback position. So that's great news for the league on the whole. And ultimately, couldn't be more excited that they have Monday Night Football. And again, Thursday Night Football, Chiefs and Chargers. That's going to be an absolutely unreal game. But for Going for 2, episode 130, that'll wrap that. Make sure you check out the Instagram and Facebook. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Josh is all over the TikTok, and we got a little bit of new website development that's going to come out, and we'll